All right, everyone, welcome to another stream. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm actually going to be giving a presentation about cybersecurity, teaching it to those who aren't tech savvy and to those who are tech savvy but can learn a thing or two. So I'm just going to give a moment for everyone to get in here and get settled. So we'll begin when everyone's in here and settled. Hope you all are having a wonderful weekend though. Now, when we begin, I'm not going to be taking any questions, but I will take questions at the end. I'm going to be sharing my many years of knowledge of cybersecurity that I've gathered with you guys in a concise and simple way. So, as I said, whether you're new to the field of cybersecurity or whether you are a seasoned professional, everyone can learn something from today's stream. We'll begin in 2 minutes. Dale, I see you're in here. How are you? All right, we're going to begin now. So this presentation is going to be about understanding cybersecurity as a whole. It's going to give a very high level overview of everything that a person would need to know about cybersecurity to be able to better protect themselves. And it's not just for individuals, this is for companies as well. So the topics we're going to be covering are what is hacking, the types of hackers, types of bad actors, the different security teams, common threats, security measures, modern cybersecurity, why security matters, as well as recommended products and services. So we'll start off with what is hacking. Hacking is done in the following ways: gaining unauthorized access to a system or a program, altering a system or program to do something it was not intended to do, and exploiting people to access places or get info, or both. What I mean,
B7H30 said, "Let's go." Spokelore said, "Congratulations. You, a member of the software and game development category, have been selected for encouragement. Please stay seated and prepare to receive a positive message. I hope you enjoy streaming. Don't forget to take breaks, drink water, and love yourself."
all right,
This concludes the encouragement. You may return to your previously scheduled content.
thank you.
So
Please,
long.
please do not interrupt the presentation, or I'm going to have to disable TTS for the stream. I will be taking questions and speaking with people afterwards. So those are the ways that hacking is done. Now on to the different types of hackers. There's black hat hackers, gray hat hackers, and white hat hackers. Now black hat hackers are cyber criminals. They're people that have malicious intent. Okay, they're the bad guys. And they have many different types of motivations, be it financial motivations, uh, vendetta against somebody, could be anything really. Gray hat hackers fall somewhere in between black hat and white hat hackers. Their motivations are unclear. So they could act as a black hat hacker or they could act as a white hat hacker. It's really up to them. They can commit cyber crimes or they can choose to help companies secure their systems and data. White hat hackers are the good guys. They're also known as ethical hackers. So, what ethical hackers do is they are hired or contracted by companies to secure their systems and information. And they are not allowed to hack without explicit permission from the companies. Now, I should also mention that there's a differentiation between ethical hackers and penetration testers. Penetration testers are often contractors and they have a very limited scope that they can act within and also a very limited skill set. So, take for example, bypassing an IDS or running a cross site scripting attack to get credit card information from a company or any particular task that they're hired to do, they should be able to do those tasks. Now, ethical hackers, they're not often bound by those limitations and they can perform a wide variety of different types of hacks. So they can act within whatever they deem is necessary and allowed by the company, but they're not bound to a specific scope. They have a wide variety of skills and they can do what they think is necessary in order to infiltrate and to extract what they need and to also patch those security flaws on the spot or fix them. Now on to the different types of bad actors. So these are different types of black hat hackers. There's nation state hackers, which work for governments or militaries, and they're very, very well equipped and highly trained. So these types of hackers can break into things like infrastructure and cause some serious damage. Then there's cyber terrorists, typically highly trained and highly motivated, but they are very, very destructive and noisy, and they have some serious malicious intent. Then there's hacktivists. Hacktivists are people that are motivated by causes, be it environmentalism or political reasons. Activists break into systems and can cause destruction or steal and expose information, sensitive data like schematics or anything that a company would think is really sensitive or a political organization would deem sensitive in order to damage their reputation or do many other things. But they're motivated by a cause and they have an agenda. Then there's your malicious black hat hackers, which are your typical petty amateur hackers that have malicious intent, like they're motivated by financial gain or other things, and they're not often highly skilled, but they're a step above script kiddies below here. So they are pretty experienced and can do some serious damage if motivated to do so. Then there's script kiddies. Script kiddies are people who are new to the field of hacking. So they're not experienced and they lack direction, but they can use programs for hacking. They just don't know how those programs work. Next up is security teams. So these are the good guys, the white hat hackers, the SOC analysts, people that typically work in a security operations center or remotely and are working towards improving a company's security posture. Purple teams, they monitor blue teams and red teams, and they are basically the leadership for security teams. The blue teams are the good guys, the ethical hackers, the SOC analysts, so on and so forth, again, that work towards improving a company's security posture and helping out where needed. Then there's the red teams. So these are people that do offensive work rather than defensive work. But the goal of the offensive work is to improve the hardening of their systems and infrastructure. So they will run those penetration tests. They will conduct ethical hacking. They will do all those things with the goal of making a company's infrastructure more secure. Next, we have common threats faced by companies. There is phishing, vishing, smishing, and whale phishing. Now, phishing is an attempt to socially engineer someone over the internet in order to gain sensitive information, confidential information that they shouldn't have access to, or to be allowed entry into a system, or any of number of reasons that they could try to manipulate someone to do. Now, vishing is a form of phishing, but it's done through voicemail. So typically, an attacker will leave a voicemail on somebody's landline or cell phone in an attempt to fish information out of them. Smishing is a form of phishing that's done through text messaging. So an attacker will send a text message to somebody's cell phone and try to get information or access to something that way. Whale phishing is a little bit different. Whale phishing is very, very targeted phishing where an attacker will try to target leadership of a company in order to get sensitive info or infiltrate a system. So they'll target somebody like a CEO or a general manager or somebody like that. Then there's malware. Now, this is an all encompassing term for many different things. We're talking about ransomware that can lock down a person's operating system or their files and encrypt them and then make a demand for money, hence why they call it ransomware, in order to regain entry into their system or get their sensitive information back. Then there's things like Trojan horses, which are programs disguised as legitimate programs, but they carry a malicious payload. They have bad code in them that can damage a system, or even it could include ransomware. So there's many different things a Trojan horse could be. And then there's things like rootkits that stealthily infiltrate a system through the kernel of an operating system and allow them to control that operating system in any way they please, but they're almost undetectable by antivirus software. Some rootkits can be detected, but the vast majority of them cannot. It's a very, very nasty form of attack. So, again, malware covers a lot of different things. There's also DOS attacks, which are known as denial of service attacks, where an attacker will send traffic from a system. It could be a server, it could be a personal computer, it could be anything really, or it could even be something like we see nowadays a Raspberry Pi, a very small computer that's very hard to spot or detect because of its small form factor. And they can send a lot of traffic, a lot of pings, which are packets, to another system in order to disrupt it, like shut it down, because the traffic will overload that system. And DOS attacks can also be performed against web apps too, not just individual systems. Then there's a step up from that, which is called a DDoS attack, which is a distributed denial of service attack. It's essentially the same thing as a DOS attack, but the main difference is that it's done with the control of a botnet, which is many different systems interconnected, and those systems can launch the attack at the same time simultaneously. So you can imagine that that would send a ton of traffic to an individual system or systems, and that could cause some real damage. Next up is an SQL injection, which is known as a structured query language injection, and it uses a programming language known as structured query language. Now, what an attacker will do for this type of attack is they will navigate to a database or a website, and they will inject structured query language that has the syntax of bad code, malicious code. So they will inject this code into the website. It could be through a login feature, it could be through anything really that uses the database, or even a payment feature. And they will send malicious commands to the database that will allow them to gain entry to a database or steal sensitive information from a database, because the database will retrieve that information and it will send them back to them if they are successful. There's also brute force attacks. Now, brute force attacks are when a attacker tries to guess the password to a computer system, and they will do this by either manually entering passwords that are commonly used, or they will use um, a password cracking tool, a utility. And there's many different types of password cracking utilities out there. But basically, these tools work by taking a dictionary of commonly used passwords, and they will run those passwords one by one by one until the right password is found. And then when the combination has been cracked, the system has then been unlocked for the attacker, or the web app has been unlocked for the attacker to gain access to. And password cracking utilities can work scarily fast, super fast. Passwords can be cracked in a matter of seconds. I'm not even exaggerating that. So it's very important to use a strong password or use a password manager to defend against that. Next, we have DNS spoofing, known as domain name spoofing, is when an attacker will take a URL from a website and they will gain access to the domain name system, and they will add their fake URL. They will spoof the URL, they add a fake URL to that domain, And then when a person tries to visit a legitimate site, they will be redirected to the fake site that contains malicious code. It could be a keylogger, it could be anything really that they want to run on that site that can then run on your system once you visit the site. And that also happens very fast as well. Next, we have session hijacking. This, again, is an all encompassing term that can mean many different things, but most typically, what we see session hijacking used for is getting tokens from a active session, which means a credential, a type of virtual credential that's used to log in and remain logged into a system for a certain period of time. And when an attacker intercepts and gets the information for this token, they can then take over that session and act as you on that session and remove you from the session so that they can do whatever they'd like on a system. Another type of session hijacking is getting a 2FA code, which means a two-factor authentication code, again, in order to log in and act as you and remove you from a session. Or they can do the same with MFA, multi-factor authentication, where they grab multiple credentials, multiple codes to get into a system that's very secure. And one of the ways that attackers can do session hijacking is they can smish a victim and trick them into giving them the 2FA code if they already have their email address and they try to log into the system with their password, but they need a code to get in. So they'll contact the victim and retrieve that code from them. Then we have identity theft. There's many different ways that this can be done, such as buying stolen forms of
Linux
identification.
didn't make Linux. Said. How are you, bro?
Hi, Linux. It's good to see you again. I'm giving a presentation on cybersecurity, but I ask that people refrain from asking questions or speaking until I'm finished. I appreciate you being here, though. Uh, so that's one form of identity theft. Another form of identity theft is um, hacking into government databases or databases of companies where forms of identification are stored, and then stealing those forms of identification in order to uh, make fake identification and purport to be somebody else, sign up for credit cards or services or things like that. There's many, or they could even steal a passport and make a fake one and travel in the name of another person to do something that's, illegal. So there's many different forms of identity theft that can occur. It could even occur by somebody hacking into someone's social media account and pretending to be them and damaging the reputation of that person's some way. There's also cross-site scripting attacks, also known as XSS attacks. Not a lot of people know that those are called XSS attacks. That's the technical term for them. Um, Now, XSS attacks are a very unsophisticated form of hacking, something that you typically see a script kiddie doing. Now, this type of attack involves taking malicious code that the hackers prepared beforehand, like JavaScript or Python or something along those lines, and then they'll go to a website or they'll open a program, and what they'll do is they will then inject that malicious code into a field. If a developer has not implemented something like input validation, okay, which means the fields that are in that program or web application will not accept anything other than the expected input, like credentials for logging in, for example. So they will then enter that malicious code into those fields, and they'll be able to retrieve sensitive information like credit card information or previous conversations that have taken place on a social networking site, for example. So these are the various different types of threats that you would typically face working in a SOC or working as an type of attacks you could run as an ethical hacker if you were working as one. Next, we have the different layers of security. There is the human layer. So this could involve having security cards on site or having trained employees that know how to deal with these different types of threats, either in person or online. Then there is perimeter security. This is the security measures that you have in place for your company on site. It could be security cameras, it could be gates, it could be padlocks, it could be keypads to get into a building, or badge readers, um, anything really. The typically the technology used for security that you would have on site. Then there's the systems themselves. These are things like servers or computers, company assets that the company needs to secure. Then there's endpoints. Endpoints are the APIs. So that stands for application programming interface, which is like types of software that communicate with each other. Or these are vendors that have signed up to provide services for a company. It could be antivirus software. It could be payment processors, things like that, right? And so all of these are known as endpoints, and they pose a security vulnerability to the company, because if an attacker can access one of these endpoints, then they could get into another system and even escalate their privileges. That's known as privilege escalation. So they can get um, access to an account that has higher authority to do more damage. So then there's networks, okay? So networks are things like Wi-Fi, wireless fidelity, as it's known as. And then there's also Ethernet connections, things like that. Those networks have to be secure as well, because if an attacker gains access to a network, that makes it very easy for them to traverse the network and access systems or even other networks that are nearby. Now, there's different types of networks. There's what's known as flat networks. Okay. For example, so a flat network is one where the different points, the different areas of the network are very unsecure, and it makes it easier for an attacker to go from one point of a network to another. They're all interconnected, they're very easy to access. Then there's applications. These are known as web applications, mobile applications, applications that run on computer, such as Discord, for example, or Microsoft Edge as a browser. Now, these applications have to be secured many different ways. One of the ways they can be secured is web application firewalls. And it's very, if an attacker is able to easily gain access to an application, then they can steal sensitive information, or take over accounts, or do anything else that they wish. It depends on their level of access. Then there's also the data. This is the confidential information, such as schematics or um, business plans, okay, financial records that a company needs to protect. Now, data is a little bit more tricky to secure because of the nature of it. It's typically very spread out. So one way a company could secure their data is to compartmentalize it, to not have it so out in the open where an attacker can grab data. For example, I noticed that a lot of developers will make very bad mistakes, like leaving credentials in their application's code. Okay, You do not want to have credentials viewable in the browser through examining the HTML with the dev tools in the console. That would be very bad, and it would make it very easier for an attacker to access a developer's account on a web application and steal whatever they would like to steal or compromise the system in some way. So, moving on, we have emerging threats. These are threats that are new to the cybersecurity landscape and are making it very hard for cybersecurity professionals to keep up with bad actors. So, we have a saying in cybersecurity, and that is that the criminals are always a step ahead of us. We have a defensive role to play. We have to react to these new threats as they come about. So, new threats have made it harder than ever for companies and individuals to secure their system. Some of these threats are generative AI. Okay, AI now has the capability to write code, and it has had that capability for a while now, and it's continuously getting better at it as users give more input to the AI. So let's take OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 for example. ChatGPT-4 can write incredible code. And one way that threat actors can use AI is they can get it to write malicious programs, malicious software for them. And it removes the language barrier because AI can write in different languages. So it makes it much, much easier for a threat actor to then examine a system, a program, a application in the language that it was written in through the form of pictures because AI can examine pictures and it can translate text from images into the language of the bad actor, and then they can then write their code in their language and get AI to refine it for them, and then they have a perfectly good piece of malicious software that could even be what's known as a zero-day exploit, an exploit that software developers or companies have zero knowledge of. That's why they call it a zero-day exploit, because there's no patches for it. It's a new threat, a new piece of malicious code, and they can take those zero-day exploits, which are written very well by AI, and they can inject that into a company's systems or applications or what have you, and it would be very hard to defend against. Next, we have the Internet of Things. So this is also known as IoT for short. The Internet of Things poses a serious security risk. I cannot emphasize enough just how much of a serious risk IoT is. IoT is an all encompassing term for things like refrigerators that have software on them that are connected to the internet, or devices like Fitbits that people wear that monitor their heart rates and transmit that data across the web to other devices such as cell phones for them to monitor and make adjustments to settings through their apps. There's also new computer systems that autonomously control cars. All of these things are known as the Internet of Things. There's even devices that control our homes, like light switch controls, which can change the color and brightness of lights, or security alarms. All of these things fall under IoT, and they're very very unsecure because they use the what's known as the Linux kernel. Uh, Majority of them run on Linux, and Linux is pretty secure by default. You do need administrative privileges in order to do things that require a higher level of authority, such as like changing your password, for example. But these devices have a lot of software on them, which makes them very vulnerable. And IoT devices are super easy to hack. So it's important to know how to secure these devices properly. Companies and individuals need to do research before using an IoT device and adding it to their assets or to their home life. But I personally recommend against, I strongly recommend against using IoT. I would never use an IoT device. So there's also what's known as advanced persistent threats, um, ATPs for short. Now, or sorry, APTs for short. Now, these advanced persistent threats are malware that's hard to get rid of. They're designed to do privilege escalation by design. And an APT could also be an actor that's highly experienced, that knows how to traverse a network well, that knows how to escalate their privileges, that knows how to um, change the settings, the security configurations for systems and applications in order to remain in that system for as long as possible. And that's one of a hacker's top priorities, is to not be removed from the system, to remain undetected. Next, we have cryptojacking, and this involves infiltrating a system, compromising a system, taking it over, and then using that system's resources, such as their RAM or CPU, in order to mine for cryptocurrency, to go through programs and applications in order to generate cryptocurrency, find cryptocurrency, and then transfer that cryptocurrency to their own wallets, their own programs and devices that they use to store it. And then they can then sell that cryptocurrency for fiat currency, for real money, like US dollars. Then there is fileless malware. Now, this is malware that does not require a user to interact with the file, like downloading a file from an email or downloading a file from a website, in order to actually hijack a device, in order to take over a device, or to um, send a keylogger to it, or anything else they would like to do. So they can compromise the system very easily, does not require any interaction from the user, and then they can do whatever they would like with that system if they have the privilege for it. Why cybersecurity matters. Companies lose billions of dollars annually to cybercrime. It's a huge, huge industry, and it's only becoming more prominent. Cybercrime can ruin the reputation of individuals and companies. People can lose their livelihood because of cybercrime, and companies can go out of business because of it very, very easily, as you can tell from the things that I've mentioned thus far in the presentation. Cybercrime is more rampant than ever before, and it's only getting worse due to things like generative AI. Cybercrime can do damage in the real world. Certain types of hackers are able to access industrial machinery, and they can cause those types of machinery to crash, which can jeopardize people's physical safety, their health. Uh, they can also access things like water supply, and they can shut off control systems in order to control the water supply to municipalities. They can also access hospital systems, and they can control the equipment in hospitals used to keep people alive, and can seriously harm a person or kill a person by controlling those systems or just shutting them down. So it's very important for governments and agencies to protect their systems as best they can, especially when people's safety is at risk. Next, we have most of our personally identifiable information is available online. So PII can be sold on the dark web. Uh, and the dark web is an area of the web where that is not accessible through traditional browsers. So there's also the deep web as well. And the deep web is just the sites that are not easily accessible. So it could be government sites, it could be sites of militaries, things like that, that are not accessible through those browsers as well. But the dark web has illicit content on them. It has sites where criminals can go to buy and sell illegal things and services, such as drugs, guns, things of that nature that are illegal in most jurisdictions. So people, bad actors can steal personally identifiable information, uh, like pieces of identity or identification, and then they can sell those on the dark web if they please. And a lot of people don't realize that there's a good chance that their PII is already on the dark web. A lot of people's identification and PII are on the dark web already. Things like credit cards, so on and so forth. Most people and companies are unprepared to defend themselves. A lot of individuals do not have secure personal computers. They have not taken the time to harden their systems. And many companies do not have uh, enough money in their budgets to hire competent security professionals to defend them. And they're also ill informed or uninformed as to how to defend themselves against cybercrime effectively, especially with the emerging threats that we see today. Cybercrime can affect more than just us. It can affect our families. It can affect governments. It can affect the the national pride of citizens of a country. It can affect so many different things that we may not even realize. Everyone can improve their security posture. I mean, absolutely anyone. There's simple steps that people can take to be better prepared and add measures that can make themselves a hard target for a cyber criminal. And that's ultimately the best thing that you can do for yourself is to make yourself a hard target online. Because if a cyber criminal is motivated enough, they will be able to breach your systems or socially engineer you somehow if they have the level of skill required. So nobody is secure online. Anybody can be manipulated. Anybody can be hacked. Every system is vulnerable. So no fortress or no system is foolproof. You don't. It doesn't matter how much effort you put into it. You will never have an impenetrable fortress. It's very important to stay up to date with cybersecurity trends, do your research, and make sure that you're updating your systems and implementing the necessary security measures to defend yourself online. The main goal is to make yourself as hard of a target as possible so that cyber criminals will give up. That's what you would like. You don't want to be targeted. Recommended products and services. These are security measures that anybody can implement today in order to protect themselves. And some of these are even free. There's VPNs, known as virtual private networks, that mask your IP address. Okay, so they protect your IP address from attackers so that it's not visible to them online. And you just have to connect your VPN. You just have to turn it on in order for it to be enabled and to start hiding your IP. Then there's proxies. These are servers that people can connect to all across the world if you have the technical know-how. Typically, you just have to edit a config file on your operating system in order to add the information to connect to a proxy, such as the type of server it is, like the protocol that it runs on, the port that it has open, and the IP address of that server. Those are what you need to connect to a proxy. So you can connect to a server and that can mask your IP address as well. Or you could do what's called proxy chaining, connecting to many different servers at the same time, and it reroutes all your traffic through those servers so that it makes it difficult to figure out where that traffic came from initially. A person would have to have access to all those servers or request the information from a company or service provider in order to get that original IP address where the traffic came from. So it's very, very difficult to breach a proxy chain. Next, a person should be running regular backups of their operating system, and companies should be backing up their servers, their computers, and their code for their software as well. It's very, very important to have backups because once you're breached, if ransomware locks down a system or uh, locks code so that it can't be accessed, it can be impossible to get the code or access to the system again if you don't have backups. Next, people should be using a password manager. Now, what a password manager does is it's like a centralized application that will add many different passwords to all of your social networks, all the services that you use online, all the websites that you commonly visit, or all of the applications or software that uh, a company sells or offers to consumers. And so it will add passwords to all those, and then you only need to have one password to access the password manager in order to retrieve the passwords for everything else. Then there's also 2FA, which is two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is a separate set of credential that you can use to log into a application or a website or a program. So 2F, an example of 2FA is receiving a text message to your cell phone via a program that would give you a code. It will generate a code on the spot. So nobody else would get the code but you unless it's intercepted by like a man in the middle attack or something like that. So only you would have the code and you can use that code to log into whatever you're trying to get into, like Facebook, for example. Then there's also MFA, which is like 2FA, but it's multiple different services that provide those codes, those credentials to you in order to access a web app or something like that. So MFA would require you to use many different programs. It adds many different layers of security and is much more secure than just two-factor authentication alone. Next, we have intrusion detection systems. These are well, it's not really a system. It utilizes a system, but it's a program that monitors endpoints for a company or an individual's computer, and it will alert the user if one of those endpoints has been attacked or if there's suspicious activity going on that would allow an attacker to gain access to a system. Then we have antivirus, also known as AV for short. Antivirus uses signature, what's known as signatures, in order to detect malicious pieces of code, malicious programs that can be executed on a system or an application or something along those lines. And the antivirus will run those signatures against new files or executables or scripts or anything like that that's been added to a system, and it will alert the user if it detects that a malicious form of code, and then alert the user that they've installed something dangerous on their computer. And it can even isolate um, those malicious pieces of code or malicious softwares and delete them from the system as well. So antivirus is a very good way to keep yourself safe online and even offline as well. Then we have firewalls, or web application firewalls, WAFs. So a firewall is a good way to protect your system, because again, it monitors those endpoints and alerts the user to suspicious activity. And it will also monitor traffic going through a web application. But a firewall works a little bit differently. So a firewall will have a set of rules, and it will determine what type of traffic is allowed on a network. So if you specify that you don't want traffic from a certain IP address or a certain area of the world, like China, for example, then you can specify in those rules to exclude traffic like that, block traffic like that. Cloudflare is an example. When you go to a website, you may see an application like Cloudflare saying that it needs to verify your identity to determine that you're not using a VPN to hide your IP address, or that you're not from a certain part of the world in order to access those sites or applications. Firewalls are a very good way to protect yourself, but you have to make sure that you have an up-to-date firewall and that it's from a reputable company in order for it to be really effective. Um, then we have employee CSEC training, cybersecurity training. I cannot stress enough how important it is to train people on cybersecurity if you're going to have them work for your company in a cybersecurity role. Um, you can hire a good cybersecurity expert, but they're only going to be as effective as the their level of understanding of cybersecurity. So if they're not staying up to date on current trends, if they're not enforcing policies such as the things that I mentioned before, then they're not going to be an effective security professional for your team. 90 it's a well-known statistic that 91% of cybersecurity incidents occur because of human error. Things like jotting passwords down on a sticky note and leaving it out where it can be easily retrieved by somebody and then used to access the system, or being manipulated through social media because an attacker would target them doing what's called OSINT, open source intelligence gathering, to find ways to manipulate that target, then contacting them and getting them to give them access to a system. These are common things that common threats that employees face, and they need to be trained on the best practices of cybersecurity. It doesn't matter if they're a part of the security team or not. Everybody in your organization, if they're online, if they're using computers, they need to be trained on cybersecurity. So that's it for this presentation, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to take a little bit of time now to answer some questions and to speak with people who would like to know more or would just like to give their input. So does anybody have any questions or anything they would like to add? I hope you guys enjoyed it, though, as much as I did. I'm going to give 5 minutes for questions before we end the stream. I must say though that it's becoming super difficult for organizations to protect their data and their systems. Security professionals such as myself, as a SOC analyst, have a lot to go against. And those of you who want to know more about cybersecurity, you can actually join my Discord, where we share resources to protect yourself online and to learn about ethical hacking and to learn about cybersecurity for the defensive teams as well, and to even learn about programming. So I will put the link in the description for people to join our Discord if they'd like to.
Gainer 552 said, https://discord.gg/2cve5sjf2h.
We've also got a section of our Discord where people can share projects for cybersecurity and coding as well. We have a setup section where you can show off your own setup if you'd like to do that. But this resources channel right here is great. It has everything you need to get started as a programmer, whether you want to become a front end programmer, a back end programmer, or even a full stack programmer. We've got everything you need there. And you guys can also ask me questions on there if you'd like. Message Gainer552 and I'll answer your questions about cybersecurity or point you in the right direction to get started in the field. But there are a lot of different jobs within that domain, such as members of the SOC team or digital forensics analysts or the leadership, like CTOs, chief technology officers, or CISOs, chief information security officers. And if you'd like to get started in cybersecurity, I'd recommend you check out some of the biggest platforms in the industry right now, which are Hack the Box, um, Cybrary, TCM Security, and HackerOne. There's many of them. I'll even put some links for those in the chat as well. There's the link for TCM Security. This is for people that want to learn defensive cybersecurity and also offensive cybersecurity.
Gainer 552 said, https://academy.tcm-sec.com.
And TCM Security is a veteran-run company, so they have highly trained experts, and they teach you exactly what you need to know, and it's very practical knowledge as well. And their students get hired with government agencies and some of the best companies in the world. There's also
Gainer
Cybrary.
552 said, https://www.cybrary.it/career-path.
Again, for learning defensive and offensive security, but it's a little bit more pricier. Then there's Hack the Box. This is a very practical site for learning about many different cybersecurity careers, and they give you practical hands-on experience. So there's labs you can do to train.
Gainer 552 said, https://www.hackthebox.com.
Then there's HackerOne, which is the same idea as Hack the Box, but not as widely known. I would say HackerOne is definitely less expensive than Hack the Box.
Gainer 552 said, https://www.hackerone.com.
Then there is some news networks for cybersecurity that I follow on a daily basis that you guys can check out as well to stay up to date with current threats if you're a security professional in the industry, or just a person that's curious about how to better defend yourself or harden your systems.
Gainer 552 said, https://www.infosecurity-magazine.com.
The Hacker News is the best news network for cybersecurity threats. I'm a huge fan of this one.
Gainer 552 said, https://thehackernews.com.
They write the best reports on cybersecurity threats. Then there is Security Magazine, not as well known, but they do a pretty good job of reporting cybersecurity threats.
Gainer 552 said, https://www.securitymagazine.com.
Then there is also Hackersploit. Now, this is a site you can go to learn about defensive and offensive security. They have a forum for newbies to go and learn more. Things like penetration testing, malware analysis, reverse engineering, so on and so forth. Good stuff. They also offer videos and sections like blue team and red team that you can go to learn techniques.
Gainer 552 said, https://forum.hackersploit.org.
All right, well, that is it for today's stream, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I will catch you guys for the next one.